Alright, hello everyone, welcome to another video I don't really make. Seems like a lot of the videos that I don't normally make do well, so whatever. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. I play a lot of RTS games on the channel, a lot of strategy games, so if you're into that, stick around. So what am I going to be talking about today? Well, Iron Harvest. It's an RTS that's decently new, actually quite new, especially for RTS games, and don't buy it. Um, Now, I will caveat that by saying if you enjoy campaigns, you may like this game. But besides that, or maybe if you're new and you just want to get the basics of an RTS down, you should maybe get this game. Just get it on sale though. um, and if you like the campaigns and it's not on sale anymore, it's on the Steam summer sale, so it's $12 for everything but the Operation DLC and the rest via Revolution. May as well grab it. But yeah, if you're anyone else, don't buy it even on sale. This game is bad. I'm going to be comparing it to mostly Company Heroes 2, uh, but I'll be comparing it to base builders as well, and yeah, stuff like Total Annihilation, which I guess is a base builder. But yeah, let's jump into it. Why is this game so bad? Well, essentially, it's bad because rosters are pitiful in this game. There are four factions if you buy the DLC, which is currently more expensive than the base game, so I haven't bought it. So I only have three factions, so I'm going to be talking about them. From what I've heard and from what I've seen, Usonia is based on the US and it has a lot of air units, essentially. But for the rest of the factions, they're all ground mechs, except for they have two air units. All of them have the same air units. The battle or the gunship, which is just a big ship that has a massive cannon that's good against infantry and okay against mechs, and the air bike, which is anti-air, although it fires on the ground. So now that we have that out of the way, why shouldn't you buy this game? Because of the unit rosters. Well, the unit rosters are quite small. Um, the three factions are not very distinct. They technically have three different uh, infantry classes. Polania has rifles. Saxony has uh, semi-automatic submachine guns, I believe. And then we have Rusviet, which has shotguns as their base infantry unit, um, which is great. I'm glad that's a thing. I'm glad the infantry is distinct. They're not all semi-automatic, because that would be terrible. Um, but yeah, that's basically it for the infantry. You also have a grenadier type of that infantry where they can throw a grenade. But yeah, that's it for the infantry. They have an ability that you can get once they, get veterancy, and it's the same thing. They just fire faster and they become not suppressed. Is what happens. So pretty bland in that regard. And that's really it for the infantry. Of course, you have the medics, you have engineers. Engineers can only build two base buildings. So if you're into base building, this is not for you. We'll touch on that later. Medics can heal all infantry units. Engineers can heal mechs and exosuit units. And that's kind of it. That's really going to be your early game. So in terms of the early game that this game has, it's quite poor. Uh, Essentially what you're going to be doing is if you're playing Dominance, which is the main mode, it's a victory point mode from Company Heroes, 3 points in each map, control 2 points and win, essentially how it goes. Or you can destroy HQs, but that doesn't happen much in my experience. But yeah, that's going to be early game, collecting points and getting materials with those infantry. You also have the reserves, of course, so you may get a hero if you put that in a reserve, and some kind of infantry unit or a crewed unit. Um, Speaking of crewed units, we can move on to those, which is very bland and unfortunate. There's an anti-mech gun. You can find it on the map, or you can produce it on your own once you get tier 2 barracks. Or maybe it's tier 1. It may be tier 1. Then, of course, you have the mortar, which I know is tier 2, although you can get it in reserve 1. And then you have the heavy machine gun, which is also tier 2 for some reason, which actually baffles me why you would put a machine gun unit for tier 2 on barracks when there are already going to be mechs that are just stomping through the game at that point. I don't know. But yeah, that's going to be your middle game. Maybe a tier 2 barracks and tier 1 mechs. You have 2 tier 1 mechs for each faction, I believe. Now, the mechs in this game are actually good. They're quite distinct from faction to faction, and there's a lot of them. You have, I think, 6 in Reserve 2 and 2 in Reserve 1. No, 5 in Reserve 2, I believe. A decent amount either way. And then, of course, each faction has 3 heroes to choose from that you get to put in Reserve 1 or Reserve 2, depending on what hero it is. And I like the heroes. I think they're distinct and fun. A theme that I was noticing, like the first hero for each faction all has a pet, or multiple pets, which I think is fun. I'm going to be leaving Usone out of this. I think I kind of made that clear, but if I didn't, I'm not going to be talking about them because I'm not buying the DLC. So yeah, let's move on. Heroes are great, mechs are great, infantry is poo-poo, crewed units are poo-poo. And then there's these exoskeleton units, which are, you get 1 each, and they're diverse between all the factions, which is a good thing. I don't have much to say about them. They basically function as an infantry unit that has to be repaired by engineers that are pretty powerful, but not good enough in the late game, which is when you're going to be making them. So, yeah. But let's move on to capturing points. So, or I guess the stages of the game. Early game, as I said, capturing points, getting stockpiles, and crewing up your guys from weapon crates. Middle game is when you're gonna start. Actually, I'd say early game is when you're gonna start upgrading your, your iron mines and your oil pumps, and then you're gonna be producing tier 1 mechs. Then late game is tier 2 mechs, and in the middle game you are going to be producing infantry, but in the late game there's really no reason to produce infantry with your tier 2 mechs because they just get destroyed. And keep some engineers obviously, but besides that, anti-armor gunners they're awful. Even, I guess they're not technically infantry, but even the exoskeleton guys, at least the Saxony ones, just fall apart in the late game, which is quite unfortunate because that's the only unit I could see you making. Besides that, you may be making mortars, maybe some anti-armor cannons, although there are mechs that do that, so it's basically mechs in the late game if you get that far. And let's talk about why this stage of the game are so bad. Obviously, the early game is going to be super bland, with not so diverse infantry, and only 2 base infantry types, really. You can't get like Polanian riflemen and then a sniper. There are no snipers in this game. I don't know why. There's just not diverse infantry, which is kind of unfortunate. There's no flamethrowers or anything like that. I think it's the unit diversity, especially in the early game, is poor. Middle game, you're going to start seeing the mechs, so it's a little bit better, but still kind of bland as all things go. And then late game, it's going to be quite diverse, and probably the moment when you're going to have the most fun, but also going to be, I don't know, quite off-putting. The late game was quite off-putting for me because the mechs had they're bullet sponges, essentially, so it takes a long time to kill a mech. It takes a short time to produce one, so you can kind of see where that's going. It's a long war of attrition, especially from a tactical RTS. Now, that's supposed to be a Code 2 killer, right? And the problem with having a tactical RTS that has a long time to kill is that your movements don't matter as much, because you're basically going to be sitting there and standing behind cover, or just, being on the open if you're a mech, which destroys cover, so that's fun. So not much tactics there, especially because the units are so slow. The mechs are super, super slow, which is actually kind of a good thing because it gives the infantry a little bit of an edge in the middle game, right? They're able to do some stuff, but at the cost of having a really boring, drawn-out late game, in my opinion. Even the gunships are super, super slow. Oh, man. If you're expecting stuff like the tanks from Company Heroes 2, it's not going to be happening. The mechs are just so dang slow. Yeah, so let's move on to the resources, which I actually feel is a bigger point than most people realize. In Company Heroes 2, you have, what, 4 resources? You have manpower, you have ammunition, you have gas, and you have, oh my gosh, what is the other one? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. And essentially, you have your base resource and manpower. Manpower is needed for any units that you're creating, and the base resource is also needed for any units you're creating. And then you have gas, which is going to be used for armor stuff, so like tanks, essentially. You're going to be able to defend without tanks, not well, but you are going to be able to defend without tanks, but you're not really going to be able to go on offense in the middle game and late game without tanks, right? Now, switch that over to, and then I guess maybe you can count supply as a resource, I don't know. Then switch over to Iron Harvest, where you have 2 resources. You have gas and iron, and they're used for everything. Iron is used for everything, gas is used for everything. I thought it would be something like Co 2, where you have the gas that is used for some things, or the oil that's used for some things, but it's mostly iron, right? Or something like StarCraft, where it's mostly minerals, but then you're using gas some of the time. The problem with this is that they're used for everything, which means they're essentially the same resource. The only reason they're not the same resource is if your enemy pushes you so far back into your base that you only have an iron mine or only have a gas mine, and then it's game over, right? You're just not producing enough. So you're essentially having one resource for the whole game, which I think is quite unfortunate. There's no it takes away some of the strategy, right? It takes away saying, let's get gas early so we can rush out early tanks. Maybe we suffer in the early game a little bit because we don't have all the iron, but at least we have the oil, right? I'm using oil and gas interchangeably, sorry. But that doesn't happen. The only strategy I see from having these 2 resources is maybe the enemy could target only your oil or only your iron, and then, oh no, that seems like it's not going to happen. It never happened to me. It's more just a steady progression across the map. Which does it lead me to my next point? I don't know. My next point is base building. If you're, say, a fan of StarCraft 2, which is a great RTS game, in my opinion, or something like Total Annihilation, you're going to hate this game. The base building in this game is garbage. You start out with the HQ. It can produce engineers, and once you get enough resources, you can call out your reserves, and then that's all your HQ does. And then you have to build barracks and workshops, and that's it. Those are your 2 base buildings. So it's not marketed as a base builder, but that's for something that's supposed to be a Company Heroes killer. It does a worse job of base building than Company Heroes. Not like Company Heroes is supposed to be doing a good job. That's not the point of the game. But what I'm saying is it's awful. And then you can upgrade those buildings to get to the tier 2 units, and that's all your progression. So it's gonna be really, really standard across the board. My guess, I'm not there yet. If you're at a high level, or maybe just a middle level, everyone's gonna have the same opener, because it's the only thing you can do. The only thing you can do in the game: collect points, build your barracks, and then your workshop, and then that's it. The only interesting build I've seen in this game is when I was playing a 2v2 and my ally built no barracks, and then they built a workshop early, which I have to say is neat. Although we lost that game because he couldn't keep up his points because he didn't have any mechs, or he didn't have any barracks, so he couldn't produce any infantry. Not like the infantry is useful late game, but we never got there, so quite unfortunate. That's about all the diversity I'm going to see. I mean, there's never a point where you're never going to build a workshop unless you want to lose, because infantry doesn't hold up through the game. So yeah, it's so to recap what we've gone through so far: really poor base building, sad unit rosters, early, middle game, and late game. Early middle game is stagnant because all of the units are bland. Middle game is the best, and then late game you have lots of diversity, but it's also quite stagnant because, you know, the mechs are so slow and just bullet sponges. What was I going to talk about next? I don't know, guys. This is a really, it's a rant video. I'm just saying don't buy this game, especially if you're a fan of something like Total Annihilation, or stuff like Beyond All Reason, or, uh, you know, Forge Alliance Forever, stuff like those games. You're going to hate this game. There's no base building, and I have to say, I don't know about Forge Alliance Forever, but Beyond All Reason has amazing unit rosters. You know, they went small. I think they're adding more, but they only have 2 unit rosters. They only have 2 factions, but there are so many units. You have hoverboard units, ground units, air units, navy units, underwater units, amphibious units, gantry units, and then tier 2 for most of those. So seaplanes. Did I already say air units? Yeah, I did. So you have all that compared to Iron Harvest, which, if it was going to be killing Company Heroes 2, it wouldn't be that far off the mark for unit diversity, because for each faction, Company Heroes 2 doesn't have a ton of units. It has a decent amount, but it doesn't have a ton of units. But across the board, all of the units are unique. You're not going to have a Tiger tank or a Sherman. You're not gonna have a Sherman tank in a British faction or the Soviet faction or either of the German ones, right? And they did it with 5 factions. I realize the British one and the American one are DLC, but I think the game's free now, isn't it? And you can get, I don't know. I bought all the game and all the factions for $5. So, yeah. So in terms of that, it does it quite poorly because it's not diverse between the factions either, which is another big point. Just don't buy this game. You're not going to enjoy it. It's not as I hate to say this. It's not as polished as Company Heroes 2. The cover is just, it's garbage. It doesn't seem to work half the time. It's hard. I can't even see where my units are going if I have more than one in a group. I just don't buy it. If you enjoy yourself, the reason I say don't buy it is because all of those reasons, and the most important one, you're not gonna have fun. The game isn't fun. You're not gonna be able to analyze your battles. There's no replays. The multiplayer takes a long time to queue up. I got a match faster than Company Heroes 2, but I think most people who play Co 2 are in Europe and not America, so the times when I'm playing don't really line up with the times they're playing, which may be something like that. But yeah, let me know if you agree with me. If you think I'm an idiot, why are you telling me what to do? Yeah, let me leave out on the last point. If you are a new player, Iron Harvest may actually be for you because it is so pared down. But only buy it on sale. Don't buy the game for $40, $50, whatever. Don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, I'll see you guys later. Adios. Make sure to subscribe, like the video. Do that.